Hi, everyone. Thank you all for hanging out with us. We know many of you have flights pretty soon after this, so we're going to wrap up promptly at 11:55. We will take Q&A. We'll have plenty of time for that. So, Greg, that's our target. We're going to be off the stage at 11:55. Okay. I'm Nicholas Johnson. I'm the chief evangelist with Kahua. Kahua is a project management information system. It's, in fact, the world's first low-code application platform as a service in the PMIS space. We're proud of that. We're also the first to achieve FedRAMP authorization and then state ramp authorization, an important security concern for anyone, certainly government agencies. We serve owners, contractors, specialty contractors, owners of every variety, from utilities to education sector, the healthcare sector, transportation, just anyone that's doing a lot of project work. We're happy to work with them. And finally, last year on this very curt stage, or on a curt stage in another location, we introduced to you asset-centric project management, a methodology that we've created that we're very proud of. So glad to be here to represent Kahua, as well as these folks. So let me ask my panelists to introduce themselves. Pat, we'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, about the work you do at Autodesk, and about what you do after work.
So first of all, many of you probably know Autodesk, but in case you don't, Autodesk is a global technology company that focuses on helping customers design, engineer, build, operate, and manufacture the world that y'all design and create and that we all live in, and the products that we use every day. I am in product management at Autodesk. I focus in the construction solutions area. I've been in that area for 14 years now, and for the last 7 years, I focused on leveraging data, applying AI, and trying to help customers get maximum value from their data. What do I do for fun outside of work? Mostly, I'm kind of a pop culture person, so I enjoy everything from movies to spending too much time on TikTok for someone my age, et cetera. So, yeah, that's pretty much what I...
So no doubt you enjoyed the Super Bowl.
I did, because...
Pop culture.
Because of, guess who we think Taylor Swift won the Super Bowl.
All right.
So, yeah, it was, and I'm from San Francisco, so we were a little disappointed, but
sorry.
There was something in that Super Bowl for everyone.
Excellent. Rajitha, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm Rajitha Chaparala, and I'm the VP of Product for Data and AI in Procore, at Procore. And I'm sure, again, similar to Autodesk, hopefully everyone knows Procore, but if you don't, Procore is a software company that has a mission of connecting everybody in construction. So it caters to all different stakeholders, all the way from owners, engineers, general contractors and subcontractors, with solutions in pre-construction, project execution, financials, and resource management. So I've been with Procore for about 1.5 years. Prior to coming to Procore, my entire career has been in the data and AI and analytics space, getting my start in credit card analytics when there was one of the only companies, industry that was doing predictive analytics, which is the precursor to machine learning. And I know we'll get into all of the details. So what I like to do outside of work, I like to hike. So actually, we just got off. My family and I went on a hike to Chile in the vacation for
hiked Christmas. All the way to Chile?
No, we flew to Chile, but we did the Patagonia hike. So yeah, it was a challenging 4 days. So yeah, that's what we like to do.
Awesome. Nice. Cosmin.
My name is Cosmin Tiku. I am the data science and analytics manager at Kahua. I focus on internal analytics at Kahua, helping our organization make better decisions through a data-driven model, but most of my work is client-facing. I help our customers, whether that's owners, program managers, general contractors, subcontractors, and everyone else involved in the life cycle of construction and of a construction project, implement analytics and leverage analytics to drive meaningful insights. So I work on our existing analytics product, develop new strategies and custom solutions for customers, and research and prototype new applications of data science around predictive analytics and today's hot topic, AI. As for what I do outside of work, I spend a lot of time traveling, and I have been very fortunate to have lived in 7 countries, visit almost 40, and learn and experience and deepen my skills in 5 languages.
Only 5.
Wow.
All right, excellent. Thank you all for that. I think it's great we get to know each other a little bit. That's really why we come to Kurt, to learn and to get to know folks, make connections that will be meaningful going forward in our career and in our life. So, all right, I represent the regular guy on the panel. I sit up here with probably 3 of the smartest people in the room. I think I represent, well, I certainly know I represent a lot of you guys out there, a lot of you folks out there. So I'm going to ask you 3 to let's begin this conversation at a little lower level. Help us understand the basics of AI as we talk about AI in construction. So Pat, could you just give us, kind of a baseline definition of AI? How is it different from what I've always heard is machine learning?
Okay, so AI has been around for literally decades, and simply, it is the science of getting machines to do things that would traditionally require human intelligence. So that can be tasks that humans do in automation, or it can also be some form of analysis, and more recently, things like creative writing and generative AI. So that's the broadest definition of it. AI it spans everything across the board, from very simple task automation to people trying to develop general intelligence, which is the robots are taking over the world. That's really very far in the future. I don't think anybody in this room needs to worry about that in the context of construction anytime soon, because just doing the first set of things is a lot harder than it looks, and we probably all can tell you that. So that's the general definition. Machine learning is a subset of AI. It's a very specific way of developing AI models where you use a technique that lets the machine ingest data and look for massive pattern recognition that will help them predict outcomes. So if you think about ChatGPT, you probably all played with it. That's basically the model was developed using machine learning, and what it's doing is predicting language based on having seen massive amounts of examples of language. So it doesn't really understand content. It just understands how to predict what the next likely word might be based on pattern recognition. So machine learning is just one of many AI techniques.
Okay. Rajitha, a different perspective, a different voice. Would you add anything to that?
No, I think Pat covered it well. So machine learning is a discipline within AI, and there's a lot of different disciplines within the AI. So I think the generative AI is one of them. Natural language processing that you reference is one of it, and machine learning. There's also the robotics that makes up part of AI. I think those are primary, and there's many, many other disciplines that are used. But those are, I think, more relevant to construction, right? That's where we are seeing a lot of applications within construction.
So I understand that for machine learning, there are different algorithms or,
Yep.
or what's the other word that they would use for that? Different teaching methods?
Yes.
What are they? Are there some top 3 or top 4 that we should understand? Are there 1,000 of them, or are there just 3 of them?
Right. There are actually 2 main machine learning methodologies. One is supervised, which is you give them, to Pat's question, you give them the data and say, you tag them all, and you say, hey, this is, for example, let's take the thing of risk, right? It's like, oh, here's all of the data, and that ended up in a risk. So you're providing the machine all of that information, and then it can use that learning with 10,000 samples, 1 million samples, and it can predict the next time it sees the same information, it can say, oh, this looks like the higher probability of this ending in risk because we've seen 10,000 examples, right? That's one, that's called the supervised learning. So you're providing a guidance for the algorithm to do it. The second one is unsupervised. So you're not giving it any guidance. Basically, you're saying, go look at all of this information and see if you can recognize patterns. And it just, clustering is one of those. It'll take everything and cluster them based on how close words or data points are close to each other. And that's more like unsupervised, where you can give it anything and it can just give you an answer. Obviously, it's supervised because you have the data as more accurate, and clustering could be anything, but all of them rely on accurate data, right? Even if you're saying clustering, and if the data is not marked properly or it's not tagged properly, it could lead to erroneous results.
So if I'm using supervised machine learning, am I really trying to help the machine recognize the patterns
Yes.
that otherwise you said it had to go recognize on its own?
You're teaching the machine by giving that pre-trained data set and pre-tagged data to say, this is what the pattern looks like, and this is the outcomes. Usually it's a binary outcome, or you can have 3, which is like neutral, but those are the outcomes you're giving it and training it on the data, and then next time it sees it, recognizes it.
So it's a little bit like if, then, most likely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's always, and important to understand that there's no absolute. It's not yes or no. It's more like this one has a 99% probability, which is as close as you can get to this is definitely what we think will happen, versus like a 60% probability where it's like, yeah, this 40% thing, but directionally, this is riskier than something that has a 20% probability.
Okay. Cosmin, are there kind of overriding themes about AI that we should understand, as we begin to see it in our industry? Are there themes or I don't know, trends that would be good for us to understand that you can see forward coming to us?
Absolutely. And I think the way I see them is there are general applications, there are contextual automation and helper applications of it, there are customization and self-service applications, and outside of that order, wherever we may find space for it, is more vision and other sense-related applications. So in general terms, I'm referring to your average text helpers, things that help you write better, summarize things potentially. In the realm of contextual helping, I'm referring to a Q&A, kind of like a Q&A chatbot. In a sense, ChatGPT, if prompt engineered and guided towards your own organization's data and the realm that you live in, that can provide contextual help. On the topic of self-service, we're seeing AI start to build itself. And I know that may sound scary, but what that refers to is helping automate processes, things that are repetitive in nature and can be very easily written out from a schema perspective, a diagram perspective, and then it can write code, it can write processes. As long as it's digital, it can help you achieve that. And the last part, which I think is very exciting around vision, is not just doing supervised learning vision, as we've learned from Rajitha what supervised means, but it can also do unsupervised classification of images, meaning it can start to label things by itself. Help you, for example, find attributes around your assets, scan for barcodes, look for various watermarks, imprints, effects on certain items without knowing what those things are prior to seeing them.
Wow. All right, I'm gonna step back a second. Pat, you said that this has been around for decades. Machine learning's been around for decades. So, I think I know part of the answer, but I want to hear from you. Why is all of a sudden it's the most important topic at every conference I go to?
Yeah.
AI is what everybody wants to talk about, and it gets inserted into every conversation, even if it's not a conversation about AI.
Right. Well, in a word, ChatGPT. So just over a year ago, as you all know, they came out with a very accessible, easy to understand implementation of AI that everyone could play with. I mean, the adoption of ChatGPT was the fastest adopting software in the history of technology. Orders of magnitude faster than things like Netflix, order of magnitude faster than any other software thing. So everybody was playing with it, even for fun, right? And so
what was the stat? Like 1 million users in like 2 weeks?
It was
something ridiculous like that.
crazy.
So
I have the bar chart in my head.
I'll interrupt you and tell you that my brother introduced me to ChatGPT. He's retired. He was a pharmacist who became a drug salesman. He comes to me and says, I was with my poker club the other night, and we wrote a sonnet.
Yeah. I called
showed
it
me
the best
Chat.
party game of that year, because that's how a lot of people were playing with it, right, initially. But it also, I think, it made AI understandable and accessible to everyone, finally. And they did some kind of amazing things to get there. So they basically, what we call, scraped the entire internet. So they went out and they grabbed all the written information available on the entire web to train this model. So that pattern recognition that we talked about, like if you've seen all the language and all of the things that have ever been written and published on the web internationally, that's a lot of language. None of us are gonna have an opportunity to read all that stuff in our lifetimes, right? So imagine like a machine can learn from that, and then it can find the patterns, and what it does with language, I think, is pretty remarkable. Like it can really predict, it can put together a really nice paragraph, you know? So, and it's very, it has some really good use cases. So it is good for term papers, and hopefully kids will learn to be critical thinkers and use it as an assistant, not plagiarism. It can be helpful for lawyers. Anything that is language dependent, super helpful for. And then there's applications throughout construction. We'll get to that later. So I think that really changed everything, and it helped people understand the power of it. And it was a very exciting, I think, development in the industry because of that.
All right, that's a pretty good baseline. I hope that helps everybody give us a place to start in this conversation, and we're all on the same page about this. So I'm going to use a bit of a Autodesk analogy as an old design engineer, and then a CAD manager 25 years ago. I remember when we first started modeling and came out with a term called BIM, and it was the coolest thing that you could see on a video, and every owner all of a sudden wanted BIM. I want one of those BIMs. Okay? Didn't know what it was, but really wanted it. So I'm going to ask Rajitha, do you think this is kind of overhyped now? Are we making too big a deal of it, or?
No, I don't think at all. I think AI, like Pat referred to, it's a long time in the making, right? 20, 30 years. Like 20 years ago when I was doing my master's thesis, I did it on data mining, which is like the previous version of machine learning, right? And then went on to like work on the applications and using it in risk scoring for credit cards. And then from there on, you know, all the industries just started adopting it. I think it really came of age, at least in my circle, with the search engines, right? With Google and Yahoo, using machine learning to actually decide what articles to surface when someone's asking a question. And then if you remember back in the day, and I don't know how many of you remember back in the day, but you would have to like type in very specific keywords to get search results. And then it became more and more intelligent with natural language search. You can ask whatever and it'll find, and it'll actually auto-complete your, that's all predictions happening. And I think that's really what took off. And then the more and more developments in the realm brought it down to, if you see who was actually deploying the AI models was actually PhDs in Yahoo and Google's. But over the years, with that, I think it's gotten more and more commonplace. There's still PhDs deploying it in large organizations, but now with ChatGPT, anybody can do it, right? With all the co-pilots that everyone's announcing, including Procore, like that is putting the power of AI in your hands. So it's not going away. If anything, it's going to get more and more commonplace. And not to be alarmist, but if you're not leveraging AI, you're going to be left behind. There's been tons of studies where folks did, everything, like investment managers, right? They're supposed to be the experts in their field. They found that the investment managers who used AI to do some of the preliminary work were actually 20, 30% more productive than folks who weren't using it. So I think of it as like a little intern in your pocket. You can take your phone, research, like you have your own intern who can do all of the grunt work, and then you're building on it. So that's not to say that you take everything ChatGPT says and that's gospel. Absolutely not. But you can build applications on ChatGPT, and it's easy. And I think that's where the other analogy I like to say is like it's like Excel. Back in the day, before Excel, I don't know if anyone remember, and I don't remember either, but I've heard of stories where people have ledgers, and then you like go and add up everything. If you change one number, you have to go re-add everything. I don't know how people did that.
Why are you making fun of us old people?
I'm just saying, and then I'm sure people thought, oh, computers are taking our jobs, but guess what? Excel is now so commonplace, and nobody's saying, I want to go back and do all of that additions by hand, right? And I think AI is going to be the same way. Like if AI can automate the very tedious manual tasks or even dangerous tasks, like with the robotics. If robots can do the things that people don't want to do, it's too dangerous to do, why would we want to do that, right? Yes, it will shift the kind of jobs we do, and we'll get more productive. So yes, fewer people doing, but then there's newer jobs like prompt engineering, right? That's like a job in itself now that didn't exist 2 years ago. Right? Asking the right questions. How can you optimize the information you get back by asking the right question? Like all of those, it's just going to unleash a ton of more jobs and avenues using AI.
All right, so you're telling us, go forward, march on. This is important. We need to embrace it.
Absolutely.
And to my analogy about the owner that wanted one of those BIM things, can you imagine doing a project now without any form of building information modeling? I mean, almost every player on your job is using BIM now, so to validate what you said. But let me ask, I'm gonna pursue, Rajitha, I want to push a little bit.
Okay.
Are there times where AI would be overkill or our concern about it is overkill? And if the answer is no, that's okay, you've warned us, but.
I mean, no, there is, you're saying concerns when we don't use AI or concerns in using AI?
Concern that I've got to have AI in this project, in this system, in this thing that I'm doing.
I mean, you don't have to have AI used today, but you have to start thinking about what do I need to do today to enable AI tomorrow.
Okay.
Right? So I think that's a good start. And I think for all of us, and I think all of us start working in data, that's a great thing because construction traditionally is a little behind on data and data quality, data standardization, right?
We can create data in construction.
Oh, right, right.
Now.
But
We're
then
good at making data.
Right, but it's how usable is the data?
That's right.
Right? Like if you call the same things 10 different things and call 10 different things the same thing, that's not usable data. Especially when you have machines trying to interpret this information and it's not a human trying to decipher this. I think we all need to start thinking about that. Like how do we get the standardization, normalization, and the quality and hygiene of our own data? Because all of these AI, like I said, work on data, right? Even if we take the ChatGPT and we want to put it into a project like Cosmin was talking about, your project information needs to be in a place where it can be leveraged by AI. So I think that's what we need to start thinking about.
All right, Cosmin, you're a data scientist, and you lead a team of data scientists at Kahua, and you guys, I've seen the work that you do for our clients. It's some incredible stuff that gives insight to the client about things they didn't know about their own business. So, and primarily though, I understand you're using analytics for that. What's the difference, or what's the relationship of analytics to AI? They're not the same thing, but is there some overlap?
I would not say that they're synonymous per se, but they do complement each other. In our work at Kahua, we are quite fond of our analytics offering, and it is a mature product that we're trying to get out there in front of every customer. And on top of this analytics offering, we're looking at leveraging predictive analytics. Analytics right now stands as a more descriptive trending tool, and then it has the power to also be predictive and later on leverage AI. Like we learned, predictive analytics and machine learning is just a subset of the AI methodology. But I think to put it into context as to what we're doing, Nicholas alluded to this at the beginning of our panel discussion. We employ an asset-centric methodology when looking at data, meaning we track an asset throughout its life cycle of the construction project. And that's from inception, from PO, from submittal, from transportation, all the way to installation, commissioning, and end of life. Having access to this myriad of data allows us to look at and employ it in capital planning. However, we don't know when things are going to fail. We don't know how to allocate our budgets, when to raise funds, when to raise a bond as a public owner. So it's really important to be able to know in year 2, 3, 4, am I going to have costs related to maintenance, related to replacement? So we're taking our asset-centric methodology and the myriad of data that we have and running it through machine learning algorithms to predict useful life and end-of-life metrics to, in the end, help us better manage our capital programs and not fall behind when it comes to fundraising and not falling behind our schedules. This is a very concrete example of we started with analytics and we're headed towards predictive analytics and the ultimate use of AI, coming into work and knowing exactly what is going to need replacement, maintenance, or even fail in the next 6 months, year, 2 years from now.
All right, excellent. All right, I'm going to ask each of a kind of a different question now. Can you simply give me one example of AI at use today in construction? Kaz, I'll start with you this time.
Sure thing. I think we all know about ChatGPT and its various use cases. As Rajitha mentioned, it is being widely adopted in all industries by all tech companies. So what we are seeing is a need for not just a Q&A solution, but something that allows you to gather outputs, summarized outputs from your own data, from your own realm, and to also allow you to make inputs into your own repository, whether that's bulk registrations, adding data, completing records that you may otherwise not want to manually fill in. The use case here is for the daily user of a software platform in construction, the person that crunches data, crunches the numbers, and has to do a daily report, has to always look at the financials. This is where the value stands right now with a tool like a large language model. Both outputs and, most importantly, easy and convenient and structured inputs.
Rajitha, one example.
Okay. I think there's a lot of use in different areas, but I'll talk about one that Procore is actively working on. So what we are trying to do is, attacking that data quality and data availability and standardization, right? When I started, again, going back to my credit card days, we were able to do predictive analytics in the credit card sphere because all of the data is so automated, right? Bureaus were collecting all the information. You get your payment habits from the payment systems, and then folks making remits back to the credit card, they're getting all of this. All of this automated. When it's automated, you're standardizing it, you're trying to get streams of information that means something and it's actually real. So I think we need that for construction, right? Most of construction data today is manually inputted. And when we ask our customers, what is the best quality data you have, it's usually financials, because that's what runs the company. And so we need to make more and more of the data in construction as good as the financial data, right? So the one way to do is actually taking all the unstructured information, whether it's your documents, your drawings, your BIM models, and then make that more structured. So that can be the basis of how you do business, and that's your information, and that's also the foundational layer for building the AI models. Because like I said, if you don't have proper data, you're not going to have good AI models. So that's a big effort that we've started over the last year and a half since I started at Procore. And we were able to get, I think initially we started with like 15 fields, but we want to do that and kind of literally flip the workflow in a way that you upload all your documents first for the project or take photos, and then we extract all the information. We kind of sort them out in the way we want to sort it out. And then end of the day, all the folks who are reviewing the doc, they can just look at all of the things and then accept or reject or modify, right? Because once you have something in front of you, you're more likely to go correct it, especially if it's wrong, versus you're inputting it like you're in a hurry to get the job done and move on. So I think that's a great use of AI. So like you're using AI to create data, and then you're using the data to actually create more applications.
Pat?
That's great. I don't know how we picked just one, but that's a great one because without data, you've got nothing. So I would say at Autodesk, we really believe that, first of all, construction is all decisions, right? Every single day, people are making decisions. And so we want to do decision support, but we want to push the decisions and the support of those decisions up front as much as possible. You've all seen the McClamey curves over the years where the sooner you make a decision, the greater the impact of that decision is. So I'll give you an example. So an RFI, what is an RFI? It's a question that wasn't appropriately answered in the design process, right? That's exactly what it is. It's like, we should have known that. So we do root cause analysis automatically of RFIs. To your point, every RFI form has a field that lets you put in the root cause, and about 4% of the fields get populated. And when they do, am I going to analyze it the same way Rajitha is going to? Probably not. But AI is consistent. So that creates, by being able to create the structured data around automated root cause analysis, then we learn some really interesting things, and we can correlate the root cause of an RFI with project outcomes. And we found some interesting things. If your project has a super high percentage of root cause in coordination, you're less likely to be profitable. Data showed us that, right? And so then we're like, okay, so how do we push that upstream? And how do we get that into the design review process before you get to an RFI? How do we help people see it there? And then pushing it all the way upstream to conceptual design. So at Autodesk, again, that's not in my department, but in the design team, they're doing a lot of generative conceptual design right now. And for owner-operators, where sustainability matters and operational costs matter to you, 70% of sustainability decisions are made at the conceptual design phase. So if you just think about that for a moment, you really can't change it when you're out in the field or when you're like turning the keys over to the owner. It's like you built the building, it has its sun exposure, that's what you get. So the more we can connect the dots through the data, and what Rajitha is trying to do is she's laying the foundation for connecting dots, and the more we can do that, the more we can be predictive, the more we can automate things, the more we can push those decisions up front as much as possible. And that's where the industry, I think, will really change. And I just want to make one plea to this group, because I think there's a lot of owners in the room, and I think you guys have a lot of clout. To do that, it's going to be really important that people share information, and you bring the disciplines in early on. And you really have a mindset of the GC should be looking at that conceptual design along with the architect, along with the owner, and everybody needs to be at that table, because 3 months later, 6 months later, it's too late. So I think AI might push this industry a little harder around data transparency, data sharing, being inclusive across stakeholders. I think that's going to be something really interesting that the industry has to grapple with. So I'll just leave it at that.
All right, I'm going to do something a little different now. We're going to go to the audience. And Palmer, we don't need microphones for this. This is a quick question. Audience, shout them out. What are the big problems that you see in our industry today? Please. So really, the same workforce issues we've heard about. There's not enough of us. We don't want to stay in the business long enough.
It's deeper than that. It's the why.
Agreed.
There is the evidence of the results of a system and how that system produces a feeling of disrespect and giving a person dignity to be in it, the way they feel treated, they've marginalized in their capacity to contribute. So it's the system designed to work the way human beings want men, or on a physical job site, want to feel and be part of a team and feel a sense of accomplishment. So how does the organization structure to do that?
Okay, so how do we make our work more meaningful? And then that solves our workforce problems. What other problems are we facing in the industry? Big problems. Okay, tech adaptation. Okay, back to workforce issues. Yeah. Safety. All right, that'll be good. Thank you all very much. Panel, can AI help solve these problems? Safety, technology adoption, making work more meaningful, and simply the fact of we don't have enough workforce.
Yeah, I can take the making work more meaningful. That resonates with me, right? It's always, you want to know at the end of the day that you did a good job. And the way you know that is by seeing results. Today, in construction, I think the information is there, but it's very nebulous. It's very hard to know if something worked or didn't work. Going back, I know I'm going to sound like a parrot, but if you have good data, you can then draw those conclusions. You can use analytics to see. You can see AI to tell you. You can say AI to predict. And using those guidance, you can see how did you end up, right? So having that visibility and transparency, I think, as you work through, and that comes into technology. As you adopt more and more technology, I think you can get, and then connect all of those technology, you can get more of that transparency. So I think that's a good way to get the future generations motivated and not feel like I'm just doing it because I'm told, but I'm doing it because I know it makes a difference.
Okay. Cosmin, Pat, would you add to that?
I'd love to add a little bit to that. Sure. As a certified Gen Zer, and hearing, of course, all the topics around education and meaningfulness of work and the why, I think the skills that any industry should be looking for, and construction is no different, is around critical thinking, the ability to, like we were talking about before, prompt engineer, ask the right questions, get the right conclusions, get the right results, and be able to draw your own conclusions from said results. What can make a job much more meaningful is having access to the broader information, feeling like you're part of the organization, vertically, horizontally, being in every discussion you can be in. And AI is democratizing information. It is way easier to access it. It is so much easier to interpret it. But what we're missing, a key part of our education, is this critical thinking ability and this ability to draw these conclusions for ourselves. But if we're able to harness that and to educate us, me, my fellow Gen Zers, and the next generation, we can provide one avenue to prove that industry like construction that's traditionally maybe looked at as a bit rigid, not very open. You can have access to all the data that you want to feel part of that organization. You just have to ask the right questions. We're looking for data leaders and the people to inquire about the right things.
Excellent. I want to pause and say, that's a great question. And I'm kind of proud of our audience that the first question was about meaning, not about schedule, budget, profit. So.
What I just heard was extremely meaningful to me, that if you could allow a worker with a phone to understand the milestones, the issues, the barriers, and feel part of understanding the workflow, also be able to take his critical thinking to be able to say, if we see we have this goal potential, and use them to feed in the barriers and the constraint, and listen to a flow that may reduce the risk. So in what Greg said about safety, safety is capacity in the flow of work to reduce risk or allow you to fail, to increase the capacity to fail. Well, that creativity is in the mind of a worker to know, I'm putting my hand on something, but maybe I don't need to even do it with my hand. Or if I have to use my hand, could something substitute for my hand? Well, that idea is in the mind of that worker. And if we have a way to tap into that and see it for its value and recognize and leverage throughout the industry these ideas, but we do not set up, we marginalize them in terms of doing tasks as to be a critical thinker by understanding the flow, what a way to understand that flow and then tap back into it and be used.
Thank you. Forgive me for cutting you off, but I know most people can't hear what you're saying, so I'm going to try to succinctly say you appreciated the answer because it's about making the young worker, all workers really, being more part of the process, seeing the bigger picture, and really recognizing their own contribution instead of being task-oriented. So thank you. That's a great question. That was great to start us. So, okay, can AI help us solve safety problems in our industry?
Yeah, 100%. I think there was a seminar on that right here this week, and that was one of the first ways that the industry got together and started working on the problem. I think there's a number of companies that have specialized in that area and done a really great job of kickstarting it. People looking at everything from automated, we now have the ability of a robotic dog to walk around and take photos on a job site. Those photos and videos can be analyzed. They can be looked at for safety problems automatically, and you don't need to do as many safety walks. It's having more eyes on the system. I think in analyzing the data, we were able to look at all the reported safety observations and classify them by, sadly, the fatal 4, right? And so which observations are more likely to be fall related, which is one of the main ways people, die, unfortunately, on construction job sites. So just having that visibility, that allowed people to see things that they couldn't see before, right? So we had, for some inexplicable reason, we had a customer in Hawaii where their project had just an extraordinary number of fall risk observations. And we don't know why. I'm like, hey, if I lived in Hawaii, I'd want to survive to go out surfing the next day. But with that information, they could adjust the tool talk to that group, and say, hey, this is happening, guys, and you want to go home to your families. This is about you and your families, and so they could really, focus it in that way. Safety was the other thing that was interesting about safety is the reason the industry first focused on that because people weren't threatened by competition around safety. They're like, all right, we all know that it's our job to keep people alive and send everybody home at the end of the day. So they were willing to share data. They were willing to come together and create consortiums. They were willing to elevate that aspect of construction for the industry. And I think that was a great example of what can happen when people are more open and willing to share data. So I think safety is one of the early success stories for a number of reasons, and I think it will continue to get better as AI improves, as image recognition improves, as things are just more automated. I think you'll see it just continue to get better because all of those innovations were made really before the foundation models came on the scene. And their foundation models, as Rajitha said earlier, they're accelerators. They're going to make things that used to take us 2 years to develop, we'll probably be able to develop much faster now. So, yeah. Okay,
excellent. So the final one of those was technology adoption. I'm going to ask you to answer this a little differently than, we'll lead into a different question that'll help us 2 ways. We're convinced that AI is going to be important and helpful and can help solve problems. How do we get started? Cosmin, what's your kind of opening advice or your recommendations? How does somebody get started taking advantage of this incredible technology?
It's a great question. I don't think we should get ahead of ourselves too quickly. We have to learn and be able to understand that without proper data, again, I just want to reiterate what Pat and Rajitha has said, how important data is and having it be in a central repository, whether that is Procore, Autodesk, Kahua, a platform software is incredibly important for centralizing data throughout a construction project's life cycle. That's the core foundation, and I know a lot of industries, especially construction, when it comes to adopting technologies, tend to want to skip steps, as I've learned in the past 2 years working at Kahua. But this is a step that cannot be skipped. You have to ensure that your data is of high quality and it's all interconnected in order to achieve and do AI. And then as we learned, there's many different applications of that. But you're only as good as your data is. And there's a very, very good anecdote for this that I always refer to, and I remember from when I was in college, it is garbage in, garbage out. And it's really important to always remember that what you're feeding a model.
Never change.
Yeah. That's right, absolutely.
I understand that. It's theoretical, but I'm gonna push a little bit. Can you put some meat on it? Give me an example.
I won't bore you with schemas and data models and queries and how data is stored, but I'll give you a conceptual understanding of something I've gotten to be involved in and I think has been very meaningful, maybe a little bit from a data nerd's perspective, but bear with me. So we aim with our asset-centric application, but as well with our platform, to make it a collaborative environment where every single constituent in the life cycle owns their own domain, their environment. They're the owners, the rightful owners of their data. Whether you are a program manager or a CM firm, you're an owner downstream, you're the GC further downstream, or you're the subcontractor, one of many even further downstream. You own your own data, but there are a lot of items, documents, workflows that are shared between these constituents, and having it all be in one centralized shared repository while everyone else owns their respective private data is a huge milestone and a really important paradigm that we should look at things with. What needs to be shared needs to only be inputted once and outputted once. What needs to be private needs to be kept private and thus might require more manual, grunt work, duplicate entries. But we're trying to move away from that as much as possible in a collaborative environment in sharing between our constituents.
Excellent. Rajitha, how do we get started?
Maybe start with not being afraid of AI and not being afraid of sharing data, right?
It's not the boogeyman?
No, it's not.
Okay.
And I know there's a lot of concerns, and I hear it all the time, and I talk to our customers is, well, I don't want to share my data. I don't want AI to learn from it and then take away my competitive advantage. Rest assured, it will not do that, right? All we're trying to see is what is the best practice? What are the standards? And if we can get standards and maybe move away from every job being a custom job, and we can actually try to say, here's best practice for building something, and here's the data standards. I think that transparency, and many other industries have adopted them and benefited from them. I think it'll benefit every one of us, right? Every company or a vendor doing it by ourselves is one thing, but the industry as a whole being open to that and not being afraid of losing competitive advantage, right? If you're so siloed that even your PMs or one job to the other can't share data, that is not a good state. That means nobody is benefiting from all of that knowledge. In a critical, I think, journey as a company is maturing and going from small to medium to big, I think the biggest benefit I see is taking away from people's knowledge in people's heads, brains, and actually making it a system so the entire organization can leverage. I think construction needs to get to that place so we can all benefit from those collective learnings and leverage it, and then AI is going to help that accelerate and help us actually stick to those best practices. And then, it answers the question of meaningful work, taking out risks, right? All of that, I think, can get much, much smoother. We all do not have to do it alone by ourselves. I think collectively we can get there, but as long as we stop fearing the common good or the sharing, I think we'll be good. Especially as stakeholders too, right? Everybody should want to see their own thing. Obviously not your proprietary stuff, but there are commonalities between the stakeholders on a project that they need to see, and I think we need to enable all of those.
I'm going to echo what you said. I spent a lot of time preparing for this, talking to some of we do a lot of work with the KPMGs and Deloittes, and had some conversations with those consultants about AI. And what I heard over and over again was focus initially on your data, because your data will be what makes you different, your private data.
Yes.
Everybody's going to have access to the same models for AI, and everybody's got access to all the information in the public domain, but only you have access to your data. So focus on that. To all of your points, get it good and clean so it's very usable, and that will be your differentiator.
Yep.
So.
And can I just add I'll take it down to the really bottom line basics, because there might be people in this room at different stages of evolution. We're talking about AI, but like I would just break it down to, if you're not digitized. If you're not on a platform, get on a platform. If you're trying to store things behind your firewall, really rethink that, because you're just making your data harder to get to. Platforms help you structure data. Platforms help you get data into the cloud. And I'll tell you the anecdotal story that I told you, because the folks who founded Kahua founded a product called Constructware years ago. 7 years ago, we were doing research on RFIs, and we met with a customer, and we said, hey, we'll look at your RFI data from any system you have. And one customer had 15 years worth of RFI data in this cloud-based product called Constructware, which was one of the early SaaS products. We were able to take that data and analyze it and look at root cause analysis and patterns of how their RFIs performed over 15 years. And when we did it, like their eyes like bopped out of their head, and we said, nobody 15 years ago could have possibly imagined that we'd be in a room today analyzing your data with AI to show you patterns of 15 years worth of data. If that data was in spreadsheets, poof, not accessible. So just get your data wrangled in the cloud, and then if you're at that part of your journey, you're going to want some data-centric people on your team. I think we all, have data-centric people. We're trying to simplify and do a lot of this, heavy lifting for you, but you're going to need people on your team as well. So if you have them, show them some love. If you don't have them, hire them. So that would be my sort of roadmap, or depending on where you guys are at. And then if you got data scientists on your team and they're ready to do some innovation alongside of vendors like us, that's great. But there is a real roadmap, but get your data in a platform in the cloud. You will not regret it. In 5 years from now, I don't think any of us can fully imagine everything we're going to be able to do with this data. It's going to be much faster than it was in the last 10 years.
All right, I promised Pat I'd get her off stage at 11:55. We have 1 minute. We were going to take some questions. We're not going to do that. But you all are available for people to reach out to. They can find you in the Curt app, right? And you'll take those calls?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And we're on LinkedIn, I'm assuming.
Yeah, LinkedIn.
So please connect with us all. We'd love to be in touch with you. I know each one of us would. The final question I'm going to leave with you that we're not going to answer, but maybe this is the one that you all need to hear from us about. So reach out to us. What are the pitfalls that we need to avoid as we begin to wade into the shallow end of the AI pool? So that's what I wanted our last question to be. It's going to be like we're going to have to go to part 2 for that one. So thank you all for your time today. I hope you've enjoyed this as much as I have. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, 11:55.